Borthakur IAS Academy, an endeavor of excellence.
Borthakur IAS Academy.
Hello everyone, welcome to Borthakur's IAS Academy, Northeast's premier institute for UPSC, APSC and NPSC preparations. I'm your friend Atrey, and today I'm here with another segment of Current Affairs 365 dated 4th of August 2021. I hope you all are doing well. This is your one-stop solution for any news and updates which will help you prepare for your civil services examination, and along with that it is also going to be beneficial for any other Assam State Government services. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook as well as Instagram for any further updates related to government services. The first language for today is new initiatives for education sector. Recently, Prime Minister launched multiple initiatives in the education sector at a conference in order to mark completion of 1 year of the reforms under NEP 2020, National Education Policy of the year 2020, which aims at making India a global knowledge superpower. Coming to the key points of the initiatives, first is Academic Bank of Credit. It is envisaged as a digital bank that holds the credit earned by a student in any course, and it is also a major instrument for facilitating multidisciplinary and holistic education. This is going to provide multiple entry and exit options for students in the higher education, and it will also make the youth future oriented, and this in turn will open the way for an artificial intelligence driven economy. Second point was engineering in regional languages. 14 engineering colleges in 8 states are going to start engineering studies in 5 Indian languages, which are Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi and Bangla. This emphasis on mother tongue as a medium of instruction will instill confidence in the students from poor and rural background, as also the tribal and also those who belong to the tribal background. Secondly, in a recent study by the All India Council of Technical Education, it was discovered that around 42% of the students who were surveyed, they favored pursuing engineering as a regional languages. Moreover, the AICTE is creating a database of resources to allow colleges now to offer more programs in regional language, and they will also develop a tool to translate engineering content in 11 different languages. Next, we have Vidya Pravesh and Safal. Vidya Pravesh is a 3-month play-based school preparation module for grade 1 students, which is going to be released along with structured assessment for analyzing learning levels, Safal, that is a competency-based assessment framework for the 3rd, 5th and 8th grade students of the CBSE schools. Then there is the National Digital Education Architecture that is going to help in building up a new education ecosystem, which will create a digital foundation leading to self-governance of all the parties involved, especially the states and the central government. And it will also let educationists do evaluation based on talents and abilities, which will help students understand their area of specialities that can be utilized in future for their professional life. Next one is the National Education Technology Forum. It will provide independent evidence-based advice to the central and state government agencies on technology-based interventions, and the special focus here will be on improving technology access at the grassroots education level. Along with that, Nishtha 2.0 will also be introduced. It will provide training to teachers as per their needs, and this will be given as per suggestions to the respective departments. Nishtha 2.0 will include 68 modules, including 12 generic and 56 subject-specific modules, which will cover around 10 lakh teachers. And last and most important point is inclusion of sign language as a subject. Indian Sign Language for the first time has been accorded the status of language subject, and now students will be able to study it as a language. There are more than 3 lakh students who need sign language for their education. This is going to boost the Indian Sign Language and will also help the Divyang people. Other related initiatives includes the National Program on Technology Enhanced Learning. Then we have the Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, Prime Minister's Research Fellowship, Scheme for Promotion of Academic and Research Collaboration, Pragyata, Midday Meal Scheme, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, etc. The second news for today is about Supreme Court's judgment on preventive detention. Recently, Supreme Court ruled that a preventive detention order can only be passed if the detainee, that is a person under detention, is likely to adversely affect the maintenance of public order. So before going to the main points of this particular news, first of all, let us see what is preventive detention. As per Article 22 of our Constitution, it grants protection to persons who are arrested or detained, and detention is mainly of two types: punitive detention and preventive detention. Punitive detention is one in which a person is punished for an offence committed by him after trial and conviction by a court. However, a preventive detention is one which means detention of a person without any legal trial and conviction by a court. Okay, the article number 22, it has two parts. First part deals with cases of ordinary law, and the second part, it deals with cases of preventive detention law. Next, another related term to this particular news is what is a white collar crime and a blue collar crime. This particular term, white collar crime, is mentioned in the judgment of Supreme Court related to preventive detention. So before going to that particular point, let us see what is white collar crime. This term refers to financially motivated non-violent crime which are committed by individuals, businesses and government professionals. These crimes are mainly characterized by deceit, concealment or violation of trust. Some examples of white collar crimes include security fraud, corporate fraud, money laundering, etc. And these are mainly associated with the educated and affluent section of our society. Next is the blue collar crime. These crimes are primarily small scale and are mainly committed to gain immediate benefit of the individual or the group who is involved. Okay, this can also include personal related crimes that can be driven by immediate reactions, such as during fights or confrontations. And these crimes may include narcotic production or distribution, then sexual assault, theft, burglary, etc. Now coming to the key points of this particular judgment. The Supreme Court gave direction to governments and to other courts for dealing with detention under preventive detention. First point is preventive detention for public order. The court held that it cannot seriously be disputed that the detainee may be a white collar offender and set it free. If they set it free by considering him to be a white collar offender, then he might continue to cheat those people in future as well. Okay, and preventive detention order can only be passed if his activities adversely affect or are likely to adversely affect the maintenance of public order. Second point was on clarity of the term public order. Preventive detention is a necessary evil only to prevent public disorder, but a liberal meaning cannot be given to this particular expression in the context of preventive detention. So before it can be said to affect public order, it must affect the community or the public at large. Third point is direction to the government. The state should not arbitrarily resort to preventive detention, okay, in order to deal with all the law and order problems which could be dealt by the ordinary laws of the country as well. The next news is related to Panchayat extension to the Scheduled Areas Act of 1996. This particular topic is in news because of the case study of tribal governance system of Jharkhand. The administrative systems during colonial period and even after independence highly affected the Adivasi self-governance system. Okay, and because of that, the Adivasi self-governance system, they have disappeared from most of the areas of Jharkhand. This act of Panchayat extension to the scheduled areas, it was supposed to uphold the traditional decision-making process of the several tribal groups which are present in the state. Jharkhand, we all know, it was carved out as the 28th state of our country from the southern part of Bihar in the year 2000. And this part was distinctively different from the northern part of Bihar in terms of its geography as well as social composition. Currently, Jharkhand has 32 different tribes, including 9 PVTG. PVTG are particularly vulnerable tribal groups. I have discussed this point in one of my previous analysis as well. And as per the census of 2001, Santhal, Orao, Munda and Ho are among the major tribes in terms of numbers which are found in Jharkhand. The entire social system was organized into three functional levels across these major tribal communities of the state. First one is at the village level. Second one was at the cluster of 5-6 villages, okay, and the third one was at the community level. The decision-making processes were considered people-centric and democratic, although women were not allowed to participate in such processes. They had their own system of governance, which was unlike the caste system, and every tribal village had a village council as the basic unit of their self-governance. And these forums, they used to act as the decision-making bodies for all matters which were related to administration, parliament and judiciary. Administrative matters were related to maintenance of the village commons like labor sharing, agricultural activities, any religious functions, okay, all these things. Then the parliamentary matters, they were related to upholding and interpreting the norms and the unwritten laws and traditional values. Similarly, the judiciary matters were related to managing the conflicts, any disciplinary action which were again guided by those unwritten norms and values. Gradually, we have seen a collapse of this system of the Adivasi self-government, okay, and after introduction of Bihar Panchayat Raj system in 1947, these Adivasi traditional governance systems, they all became weak. As a result, due to the non-priority and neglect, the process of traditional governance system, it was mainly affected, and this effect was aggravated by industrialization, displacement of the Adivasis as well as urbanization. So in order to promote the local self-governance in rural India, the 73rd constitutional amendment was made in the year 1992. Through this amendment, a 3-tier Panchayat Raj institution was also made into a law. This act, it conferred the absolute powers to the Gram Sabha, whereas the state legislature has given an advisory role in order to ensure the proper functioning of panchayats and the Gram Sabhas. This act is also considered to be the backbone of traditional tribal legislation in our country. It recognizes the traditional system of decision-making process and stands for the people's self-governance. The next news is related to 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution. Recently, the Union Minister for Education has informed the Lok Sabha about various steps which are being taken by the government in order to promote languages which are present in the 8th schedule. The constitutional provisions related to the 8th schedule are as follows. Article 344(1), it provides for constitution of a commission by the President on expiration of 5 years from the commencement of the constitution. Then Article 351, it provides for the spread of Hindi language to develop it in such a manner that it may serve as a medium of expression for all the elements of the composite culture of our country. However, it can also be noted that there is no fixed criteria for any language to be considered for inclusion in the 8th schedule. Currently, there are 22 languages which are mentioned in the 8th schedule, and initially only 14 languages were included in the constitution. Sindhi language was added by the 21st Amendment Act of 1967. Then later on, Konkani, Manipuri and Nepali were included by the 71st Amendment Act of 1992. And finally, Boro, Dogri, Maithili and Santhali were added by the 92nd Amendment Act of 2003, which came into force in the year 2004. Currently, there are 6 languages which enjoy the status of classical in our country. These are Tamil, Sanskrit, Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam and Uriya. All the classical languages, they are enlisted in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. And Ministry of Culture, it provides for certain guidelines regarding classical languages, which includes high antiquity of its early texts or recorded history over a period of 1500 to 2000 years. Secondly, a body of ancient literature which is considered a valuable heritage by generations of the speakers. Then the literary tradition is original and not borrowed from any other speech community. And lastly, the classical language and literature being distinct from the modern. There may be some discontinuity between the classical language and its later forms or its offshoots. Once a language is notified as a classical language, the Human Resource and Development Ministry provides certain benefits in order to promote it. These are 2 major annual international awards for scholars of eminence in the classical Indian language. A Center of Excellence for Studies in Classical Languages is also established, and the University Grants Commission (UGC) it is requested to create at least in the central universities a certain number of professional chairs for the classical languages so declared. And this was all for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it will be helpful. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll see you all again tomorrow with another segment of Current Affairs 365 only on Borthakur's IAS Academy, Northeast's premier institute for UPSC, APSC and NPSC preparations. Till then, take care, keep learning. Bye-bye.
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS Academy